remember, like, what was your earliest introduction to singing or performing?
Well, funny enough, my mother always says that I actually sang before I spoke.
Yeah.
So I would have come from a family of singers. My whole family really would have been involved in music. And I'm not just talking my direct family, like as in my brothers and sisters and all that, but the extended family. My mother was one of 13, and all of I've had cousins that have represented us in the Eurovision. All of my uncles would have sang into Cork tenors and all of this kind of thing, and everybody was always involved in music. So any gathering that ever happened at our house, it was usually one guitar and like 25 voices. So it was always about singing, and my mother sang constantly when we were young. And, she just was one of these people that she got up in the morning, the radio went on, and she was just singing with everything that was going on. So they all say that Fiona sang before she ever spoke any words.
Wow.
So,
Well, it was kind of seems like it was kind of part of your daily lives because, like, often, like when like anyone I chat to, and myself included, when they say about you know where did the music come from and that kind of thing, like there's usually like a singer in a family or a singer in a group of friends, like but seems for you all your family were singers. They at least all
yeah,
participated, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And even when we were young, I would have been, we had a cupboard up in the house that was our like dress up cupboard, and we used to go in, and I used to dress all the siblings up, including my brother, who was often put into dresses. He was like that. So I would dress everybody up, and then I would choreograph all these performances and have everybody doing different parts. And we were only kids, like we were only probably from, we started when everybody was very, very young. So I was the eldest of four. So then we would go down and we would put on these elaborate performances for my parents and my whoever would watch, really. Um, and then in school, I was in the choir, and I was in a very small school, so I was recognized immediately that I could sing. So I was given all these parts, and it was just one of those things. Um, and then out in the park, we used to do the same situation. We would draw stages with chalk. And I would, have all the kids in the park doing dance routines and everything. So it was always in my spirit, from the very beginning. So
That's
um
fantastic. And can you
yeah, yeah.
remember? Can you remember like who was like the first kind of singers or artists that like really inspired you or like got your attention that kind of made you a bit maybe to be a bit more serious about it or just to have fun with it or
Um well, I moved to America when I was 12 with my family, and when I moved there, I really started like I would have grown up with people like the Bee Gees, and my mother was big into Nancy Sinatra, and I loved Nancy Sinatra when I was young. These Boots Are Made for Walking was one of my favorite songs when I was young. And I would have been quite influenced by a lot of the older artists, the Beatles and all that. So, and I would have been very into listening to pop music, obviously on the radio and the top 30 and all that, and would have recorded it all when I was young on tape recorders. I'm showing my age.
yeah. Oh, I had tape
But
recorders too.
when I moved to the States, I suppose the biggest person really who was just massive at that time, of course, was Madonna. And she would have really kind of been a bit of a print on my life when I was younger. And then I started getting into Queen, and Freddie Mercury played a huge part as well in my development, and just the whole sound of their music, and the range of his vocal, and there was just so much there with him. And then I actually didn't sing then for many years, unbelievably, because when I was about 16, I had a family member that told me that I couldn't sing. And yeah, and every time I would sing, they go, "Oh my God, you're so terrible. You're so off key," and all this kind of thing. And it turned out that they were just pups and were kind of, but it really affected me. And for about 5 years, I didn't sing
Wow.
in public or in front of anybody. And, so it was very, very weird. And then I moved to America myself at 21. And when I did, I was working as a waitress in a kind of a pizza place. And there was a guy there playing a Nelson. I don't know if you know what the Nelson is, the big steel blues guitar.
Oh, I know the ones. Yeah,
A
yeah.
national, sorry, a national.
Okay.
And and they he started playing some kind of Irishy type of stuff, and
Okay.
somebody's like, "Oh, this girl is from Ireland. Let her sing, let her sing."
Yeah.
So he's like, "Do you know Danny Boy?" And I was like, "Well, probably the only Irish song I
Yeah.
actually know all the way through." So I said, "Yeah, I do." So I ended up singing Danny Boy with him, and the whole place just erupted in, like applause and all the
Wow.
rest of it. And I was taken aback. I was like, "What happens here?" And he actually said to me, "Look, I would love for you to start performing with me." And that was kind of where it started. And I started singing with him and doing blues stuff and
Wow.
started doing kind of different things like that. So that was kind of my first intro into the bluesy kind of world. And then the bluesy world ended up taking me into the jazzy world. So yeah, so we had a band. They were called the Acoustic Travelers.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was the two of us, and then we ended up getting a young girl who was on the violin, and we ended up getting a guy who played a little bit of percussion. So we had a lot of kind of local gigs around the Massachusetts area, New Hampshire, Maine, that kind of thing. So that was kind of my intro into kind of performing. But I would have done a lot of performance when I was young as well, because my cousin was a very, very famous, well, in Ireland and in Europe, choreographer. Her name was Donna Daly. She passed a couple of years ago, but I would have danced and kind of performed with her. So when I was younger, I would have been on the Opera House stage for Tops of the Town and things like that. So, but
That's amazing.
yeah.
So
Mm.
would that kind of have been one of your highlights as a child performer, maybe performing at the opera house?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been trying to get back there ever since, Rebecca.
Oh, you will get there, girl. You will get there. The world just doesn't know about you yet. But isn't it interesting that you kind of your first exposure, I suppose, to being a performer in kind of a venue or in a pub setting was singing kind of traditional music, or music that was kind of linked into your culture.
Mm,
And now, if we look at where you're at now, you were in America, and now you're in a band with an American, and
I
you're
know,
performing a traditional music from around the world.
I
Isn't that
know.
kind of a bit of a coincidence?
It is, it is, it is. It's a little bit of an oxymoron, I suppose, really, you could say, or if that's what you would call it. It's, I mean, yeah, the world does flip quite a bit in that way, that reflection. Um,
And sorry, were you going to continue there? I interrupted.
I was just going to say that when I actually once I actually kind of left the acoustic, because I moved to a different area then, and I left the Acoustic Travelers. But at that point was when I really was starting to get into listening to Billie Holiday, and
Right.
that influenced me. And then I started getting into all of the female jazz singers, and then like started listening to Miles Davis and all that kind of thing. And I was always very taken with the expression of jazz, like just the amount of technicality that is utilized when you are singing in jazz, and the different ranges that there are, and the different type of chordal structures and stuff like that. And it just kind of it was new to my ear because I didn't grow up with it. And I suppose as well, when I thought about jazz, a lot of the time, when people would have said jazz back in the day, it would have been, that that kind of thing where you're like, whoa. Um, and and then I started listening to a woman who was still alive, and I think she may even possibly still be alive right now, by the name of Abby Lincoln. And she would have been kind of the new buck on the scene when Ella and Billy and those guys were phasing out and getting quite
Right, yeah,
older.
I don't think I've
She would
heard of
have
her.
come in. She's amazing. She's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman. And I got the honor of seeing her perform live, and I got to meet her and speak with her in Boston many, many years ago.
Wow.
So it was just like such a special thing to be able to meet somebody like her. Um, and I was just so taken with how she actually utilized props.
Props.
So, at one point she'd be sitting on the chair, then she'd get off the chair, and then she'd be reading from her notebook, and then she'd have a hat on, and then she'd take the hat off, and then
Mm-hmm.
there was just she just kind of she just with a very small little slight differentiation in what she was doing, she created a whole other vibe, just simply from going from standing to sitting for a particular song. It just created like she didn't have to do anything else because her vocal carried it, but she just changed the situation so slightly that, and I was like, wow, that's amazing, like she's doing practically nothing, but it's really inspiring. So that was something that I then kind of started to utilize within my own performances, just kind of doing. And she'd put her glasses on and she'd read from the book and then she'd take them off. So it was just these simple things. They weren't very massive things, but they were just kind of, rather than just being in that one space all the time and just singing and just doing and just, she really engaged with what was going on around her, and she engaged with the audience, and she was very open. And afterwards I got to speak with her, and I just went up and I just was in awe, obviously. And I said to her, "Oh my goodness, like, I just absolutely love you, like I'm so so honored to meet you." And she's like, "Honey, I can tell you're a singer." And I said, "I am actually." She said, "Well, I'm going to give you one little bit of advice. No matter what, no matter when, what you need to do is sing with your soul. Sing with your soul. Once you sing with your soul, nothing else matters." And I was like, okay.
You're like, okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and it was like, it was just a wonderful moment for me, so yeah, I've got to meet a good few, like I also got to meet Luciano Pavarotti, which was amazing as well. So yeah, so
Like
I
such different performers and different singers, but like it's interesting how different singers can capture our attention. And especially as performers and singers ourselves, like I think sometimes we're a little bit more analytical about how we watch a performance or how we experience a performance. And you took note of what was the name of the girl that you were talking about?
Abby Lincoln.
Abby. You took
And she was probably in her late 60s when I saw her.
like you saw the way she uh took charge of her space and were like, that's interesting. And you probably have taken a lot of inspiration from how she does that herself, because I've seen you perform and you use the floor and you're not afraid to walk up to somebody and perform to them. And it's kind of like yeah, like a little bit like theatrical,
Mm.
but I think is perfect for that, the jazz kind of style of singing. Like it's a little bit more of acting to it in a sense, like the way you can add in a few little moves as opposed to maybe other genres where you might have, I don't know, choreography, or maybe just kind of, I don't know, like what's it called, the power stance, and like different things, as opposed to like having like little kind of actions and things like that. It's like a different style to do.
Yeah, yeah. There's an elegance to it, I think. And I think that was the thing that I really took from her, was that there was this elegance and grace that really shone through. And many other people over the years as well, have really kind of and
Mm.
I did many years as well of listening to opera. Because I was living in the States, so I used to go to the Met, and that
Wow.
was one of a wonderful experience. I saw so many amazing, amazing performances, and I was so taken by the fact that they didn't use microphones.
Right. Yes.
All about projection.
Yes.
So I did a little bit of study actually. Over the years, I had a couple of different teachers in America. uh, they're all passed away now actually, so it's quite funny. I'm like, man,
Oh, no way.
don't be my singing teacher. But they've all come to demise. But I did actually study a little bit with a an opera singer in New York City. One of my partners at the time was studying opera,
Okay.
and so we would go to the Met together quite a lot. And then I actually ended up doing some study with the teacher that he had as well. And she was, at the time when we were studying with her, she was actually in her 70s. And this was, you know, she's well past now at this point in time, because I was only in my 20s at that stage. But yeah, so that I knew I never wanted to explore opera as a genre that I really wanted to sing. But I took some lessons with her just to learn about projection and learn about how to, you know, find the voice in a different place. And because for me, I suppose my voice has always been a thing that I feel is quite a spiritual thing. Um, and some people, they'd say, "Oh, where does that come from and how do you do it?" And a lot of the time, I just feel like I'm not even there. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah, no, it makes total
it's
sense.
like an
Yeah.
overtaking. It's like I become like a channel to what needs to be done, and especially because I would qualify myself as an improvisational vocalist, really, that I can just jump up with anything. Or, people are like, "Oh, what kind of music do you sing?" And I'm like, "Well, what have you got?"
Yeah.
Is usually my answer.
Love it.
So,
Yeah.
so over the years, I've been with DJs and reggae and, like hip hop and loads of different types of genres. So it is one of my skill sets that uh, a friend of mine, Dara, he says, Fee, you're just so brave. That's the thing. You're just brave. You just get up there and you don't know what's coming, but you just do it anyway. you know.
Yes. And I
So
think that that's so admirable because, like, obviously I'm a singing teacher, and like one of the things I would find a lot of my students are afraid of is improv. They're afraid because they don't know what's coming. And maybe part of it is because a lot of them are beginners and they haven't quite learned the skills, and they don't have the musicianship or the knowledge, the little bank of musical ideas there to draw on. But I would say, listen to you speak about kind of where you started and kind of the different areas you kind of ended up getting into over the years. You seem to have picked up influences from lots of different areas, so you've collected a bank of ideas in your mind. So somehow that kind of like comes through you when you do improv, and you just have to trust that it's there. Improv is the maddest thing ever. It's so amazing to be able to do it. Like, I do a little bit, but I'm absolutely nowhere near to the level that you are at it. But I think it is about collecting that bank of ideas, whether you do that through years of experience of listening and performing, or you study music, or at a higher level or whatever like that. Um, can you remember a time where you were doing improv and it just it didn't go well, or
Um, well, I mean, I suppose that's the nice thing about jazz. They say there's no wrong notes, you know. It's it doesn't matter about the note. It matters about the one that came before and the one that comes after, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, obviously there's points at some times where and even not doing the jazz, but even just being put on the spot where you might get a brain freeze, you know. And for me, actually, it's you know when people sing an old song there, you know, people are like sing a song, and then all of a sudden you're like, I know no songs. I actually, you know, you
yeah,
get
we're
this
all the
complete
same.
blank where somebody you're at a party, you're like, ah, give us a song. You're like, oh my God, there's no songs in my head. I actually don't think I know any songs, you know. So that I think is kind of my big, you know, like cross is that a lot of the time if I'm put on the spot to sing a song, I don't have a song. I can't ever think of a song.
Yeah,
And I just end up defaulting to, you know, something like as you know, Danny Boy or something like that,
yeah,
you know. So like, you know,
summertime,
so
or yeah,
but yes, I mean, we've all had days for sure where, you know, you may be a little bit off physically or you may be a little bit off mentally and you know you're in the moment and you might listen back to yourself and be like, "Ooh, oh, that wasn't great," you know. "Oh, what did I do there now?" And you know, and obviously there's been performances that you'd be delighted with, and then there's performances that you are just kind of like, "Oh God,"
want to
you know.
forget about.
Yeah, that could have been a bit better, you know. But I can't think of one that was an absolute disaster. I think
Yeah,
I've always been able to pull it back somehow
yeah.
over the years, you know, for sure.
Would you have any advice or tips for anybody who is interested in getting into the more improvisational side or scat singing, for example? Would you have any tips for them at all with regards to how to improve and get better?
I think the big thing really is to just do it. You know,
Yeah,
it's the same thing. If you just start practicing, you have to listen, and just you'll well the nice thing to do is I say like just choose at the beginning certain syllables or certain sounds that you're going to work with. So for instance, you might just say, okay, I'm going to work with beep, I'm going to work with whoop, I'm going to work with, you know, he, I'm going to work with la, whatever, and then just saying, okay, I'm going to try to just sing this where there would be words rather than singing all of me, why not take all of me? And I'm going to instead just go with a bop, you know,
yeah,
bop ba da, ba da bop 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 ba da, and just
yeah.
start working on just putting the one syllable in there and practicing just using that, and then listening as well to instrumentation. That's a really important thing, is actually listening to how does a trumpet sound when it's playing,
Yeah.
or how does even the guitar sound when it's doing a solo, or when you know somebody is doing a saxophone a solo, or so that you're actually getting the intonation and you're getting the sound of what they make and then trying to mimic those sounds is really, you know,
So
where it's at
you're looking at your voice as if it's one
as
of
an
the instruments, as
instrument.
opposed to you're being a singer. You're actually
Yeah,
happening as an instrument.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's really
And
cool.
I mean, my role in the underscore a lot of the time is I'm not even singing lyrics. You know, like there could be somebody else singing lyrics, and like, or Jorge could be singing a song, and I might be doing some backing with him, harmonies and all the rest of it, and then my part is literally just being an instrument. And I've got different types of things that I do so that I'm not doing the same thing all the time. So, you know, at some point I might be doing like a trumpet, or I might be doing something that's just with the Z's, and it's zip-up, zip-up, doing like just little bits like that. Or so in the moment, I might choose what I'm going to do and just work with it. Um, and sometimes I'll even do things where I'll pull my cheek. So,
I've seen you do that live, yeah.
so, and I'll do like little things like that, or I'll do things where I'm going like this, and like, and doing different stuff. So you just have to learn how to utilize where your tongue placement is, how you're going to the constriction in the throat, where the sound is coming from in the body, and you're just feeling into it. It's really it's an entirely embodied experience, like when people play instruments, a lot of the time they don't have reverence for the original instrument, which is the body, you know. And the voice sometimes can be seen by instrumentalists as kind of a like, oh yeah, well you can sing, but what else can you do, but I think when you're actually really embodying it and becoming another instrument, you are it is an instrument. This is my instrument. My body is my instrument. So I think that that's as well, with the yoga, because I'm also a yoga teacher, and I also do a lot of stuff with sacred sound, and I do a lot of stuff with sound bathing and vocal activation. So that has allowed me as well to really find the places in my body where my voice comes from and where the different points of resonance are, because like this is a resonant chamber, this is the thing, this is the thing that makes it all happen.
Is there any kind of vocal warm up or routine that you do to prepare your physical body for being able to produce those sounds?
Well, I would do a lot of, I love warming up in the shower. Actually,
Mm.
that's one of my favorite places to do warm up if I have the time to be having the shower before going to a performance, because I just feel like the hot water really helps to open up the body, and also the resonance within the shower. It's like, you can hear it all singing back to you. And I like to do like toning in the shower and hear the different vibrational stuff coming back to me.
Okay.
Um, but I would do quite a lot of different stuff with self massage
Yeah.
as well. So if I have any type of big gig going on, I would get up into the Maya Hyatt and the diastrics and all up into the temples and into the masseter, and just really working on that or facial massage really, and just
Mm.
trying to get into those places, and also stretching,
Yeah.
opening up the chest and making sure that, like, I've got like some stretch going on in the shoulders, and working getting into the neck, all of that before I even start
Vocalizing.
vocalizing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I find all of that physical kind of part of the warm up so important, like, because it really helps connect your body to your voice. And although your body and your voice are kind of one, but they're also different, so they kind of have to work together to become one. So if you have, even something as simple as a few shoulder rolls and neck stretches to the side, a bit of maybe tongue stretching, um physically doing the massage in the jaw muscles and in the face and around the neck, just like what you just were describing there. um or like side stretches to really like open up those intercostal muscles in the rib cage. Like, you just feel like a different person when you really waken your body up before you actually
You
start to
do.
sing.
You do. And it's so important. And it's really like, I've had a few, people over, even just in the last couple of months, that have been kind of doing a bit of work with me. And that you know, they're all like, I've never even thought about the fact that all of this is all connected. You know, it's like they think that it's just so. And also, I've in the last year, I've been really, really kind of getting more into the connection between the jaw and the pelvis,
Interesting. Yeah.
which is a huge thing.
Do you want to
And
tell us a little bit about your findings?
well, there's quite a lot of research coming out now over the last couple of years about the correlation between the jaw and the pelvis. I mean, the structure of them is actually quite similar. They both have you're working with diaphragms in them both. Even just the shape, it's like the jaw is actually almost like a mini version of the pelvis.
Yeah.
And there's loads of research. I've been kind of doing a bit of stuff with um this woman. Her name is Ginger Garner,
Okay.
and she's a physiotherapist, but she's a yoga teacher, and she's also has been a singer and a performer over the years and all that. And she really does amazing stuff around um just the three different diaphragms in the body and how they all link up, and the correlation between the tension in the jaw and the tension in the pelvis and the tension in the pelvis and the tension in the jaw, and how they mirror each other. So
Okay.
the work that I'm doing now is working with just like connector points in the body and doing like kind of self touch. And what I found is that when I experience tightness in my jaw, I'm really feeling that it's expressed now. I can feel the expression of it in my low back, in my pelvic girdle, right down even into the psoas, you know,
What's the
all of
psoas?
those. So the psoas is one of the muscles in the body that we walk with. It connects through from the back and it comes in through the kind of the top of the pelvis and wraps down, and it connects into the top of the legs.
Wow.
So it can get very tight, especially from sitting. And you know, we're all incessant sitters these days. It's
Yep.
like
I'm doing a
kind
lot of
of,
that at the minute with a 4-month-old baby.
oh yeah, you do lots of sitting, lots
Yeah.
of sitting. You do lots of jumping around as well, but there's a lot of sitting when you have a 4 month, especially if you're breastfeeding. You're just constantly in that position. So, um, and like so the correlation between the yoga really and that is like for many years I've been saying to people sitting is like the new smoking, because when we sit too much, the muscle, the psoas muscle actually comes in and connects into the base of the diaphragm. So when it starts to, when you're sitting, eventually over time, it's kind of contracting and it's shortening. And that ends up actually
Pulling.
dragging.
Yeah.
So it's slightly pulling the diaphragm down. So we all, you know, I mean, most people know how the diaphragm works. When you breathe in, the diaphragm pulls down in order for the lungs to be able to take in the air, and then when you breathe out, it moves up in order for the lungs to be able to expel.
Yeah.
But if the psoas muscle shortens, then what ends up happening is that there's this already, it's being slightly pulled down,
Yeah.
so it makes it that you can't actually take a deep breath.
Yeah.
It's much harder
Restricts
because
it.
there's less space. So, you know, if we were going, we'll say from an ordinary diaphragm, if we breathe in and it pulls down like this, but if we're working from the diaphragm and it's already slightly pulled because the muscles aren't bringing it together completely, then you know you're already lacking that much breath as it pulls
Yeah.
down, and when it comes back up. So it's quite it's an intricate thing really. But so I'm big into getting into in under the diaphragm and in under the rib cage as well, and just massaging in there, and there's certain points in the body. So I'm doing a lot of work with that in this last year. And I do that kind of work when I'm working with the vocal activation.
Tell us a bit
And
about the vocal activation. What is that?
so vocal activation is, again, it's about actually finding the voice in the body and utilizing the voice in order to get into the organs and different parts of the body. And it's not about singing at all. There's no singing involved in it. It's about expressing sound
Mm-hmm.
and drawing sound into different parts of the body while using movement as well in
Wow.
order to really embody the sound and create spaces in the body where the resonance can happen, but focusing. A lot of the time the sound isn't even being expressed outward, it's internalized.
Okay.
So it can involve things like humming, toning into these deep places while moving, getting into places as well that a lot of the time there's so much tension and there's so much trauma
Mm-hmm.
in certain areas of the body that, you know, I invite people to just express whatever sound is coming up for them at certain points in time. Now, there are specific sounds that are for specific organs in the body that we would
Mm.
work with. But then there's also these places where people just literally need to, like, I just call, I say to people, like, let out the dirty sound, the sound that you don't want to hear, the sound that actually makes you almost cringe when it comes out of you, because those also are so beneficial. They're so healing because after that sound comes out, then there's a purity that comes as well. So
That's that's making me connect what you're saying to when I was in labor. Actually, I don't know if this would
absolutely.
link into what you're saying, but I was only telling a friend about my labor experience yesterday, and when I this might sound strange to some people, but anyone who have been through labor might understand. They may have been through experienced something similar, but I actually found myself singing these notes, and it really helped me deal with the pain. It helped me manage the pain. And I found myself shifting through different pitches. And I was literally singing notes like literally like these high notes. I'd say anyone down the corridor was like, "What the hell? Jesus, you're one who's, what does she think she is, a singer or something?" Like, yeah, actually I am. But it was really helping me manage the pain. And I found myself, I went into like, I honestly think I went to outer space or something. It was the most surreal experience of my life. But the thing that got me through the pain was the expression of sound and shifting through different pitches to help me manage the pain. I
Absolutely.
wouldn't have got through it without it. Like,
Absolutely. And it's amazing that you say that, because that is exactly how I've dealt with pain my entire times. I did the same thing in my pregnancy. And when I lived in Hawaii, I broke my arm, um and I fell off a bike, and we were living in the, absolutely, I'm talking like the middle of nowhere. And it took me 7 hours to get from when I actually broke the arm to the hospital where I was, it was just a whole process. And by the time I was able to find somebody to bring me, and then it was a 2-hour drive over, and there was all this madness. Excuse me. And they had to reset it in place, and because it had dislocated and all this. And that was actually the first time that exact thing you're talking about, that exact thing. They were asking me if I wanted painkillers. I was like, I don't, because it's not something that I generally am kind of into taking. And I did that, and they were like, what the heck is going on? I was in there as they were, I was just like, and that was how I was able to utilize the pain, was shifting between these different pitches and certain things that they would do. So I absolutely agree with this. And I did the same thing in my pregnancies. Luckily I had my one of my children at home, so I was able to do that. But the other one was born in the hospital,
Oh,
and it
you
was a
actually
very
gave birth at
small
home.
hospital, so
Right.
I was able to do it there as well. So
Yeah. God, it was such a crazy experience, but I just, like, I didn't even consciously think about what I was doing. It just happened. Like, I just started shifting through pitches and I was like just holding the note. I think I sustained the notes for longer than I ever have in my entire life.
absolutely,
It was amazing, really.
yeah, absolutely, and it's actually, again, there's the connection between the voice and the pelvis, because there that I taught pregnancy yoga for many, many years. And that was one of the things that I had learned about, um, through a woman called Ina May Blaskett, who she wrote a book called Spiritual Midwifery. And she always spoke about the connection between the cervix and the throat.
Oh,
And
interesting.
she would talk about that when you were in labor, if you were having difficulty opening up, that one of the things to do was to kiss passionately your partner,
Oh,
and
wow.
then to sing, and that would
Interesting.
actually open up the cervix,
So, oh, that's so interesting. So the kissing probably loosens the muscles and helps the
loosens the
muscles
muscles of
relax
the
up.
mouth and the jaw, which in turn helps to loosen the pelvis, helps to open it up, and helps to open the cervix
And probably
for
the
delivery.
the kind of feeling of the intimacy as well probably helps relax you too, and that would obviously help release tension as well.
Yes, and it's funny because, often I used to say that to women when they were, were like prepping for, and I used to teach a workshop, which was when you brought your partner in, was
Yeah.
called Yoga for Birth.
Mm.
And it was giving you different tools to be able to utilize in the moment. And I used to speak about this, and they were like, "He's the last thing I want to be doing," you know, like, kiss him in that moment. He was the last person I ever wanted to see.
Yeah, like he's the reason I'm in this pain. That's so
Yeah,
funny. That's
yeah.
hilarious. Oh my god.
But there's such a correlation. And
Mm.
again, I mean, I've worked with people with special needs over the years as well, with voice, and that's something else to think about, is the fact that I've worked with people that are non-verbal, but yet they can sing. Did a little bit of work with Cope, and it was just so unbelievable to see how, when the people are given the opportunity to just simply make sound, that if you will make a sound, they'll do some mirroring with you, and then all of a sudden they gather this confidence to be able to do it themselves, and the stuff that comes out of them is just magical. It's magical. Yeah, so, and that's because when we sing and when we speak, we actually, they're two different parts of the brain. And when we sing and when we speak, we also utilize different parts of our vocal cords and different parts of our throat. So a lot of time people say to me, "Oh, I can't sing," you know, and it's true. Some people have a very hard time being in pitch and all the rest of it. But I really think that I often say to people, "Well, can you sing happy birthday?" And they say, "Yeah." Well, then you can sing, because that's a song, And so, and I think that everyone has a song. Everyone has a song inside them, and whether or not that song is with words, or whether or not that song is, to for other people or whatever, I just feel like every person has the gift of being able to make sound, whether it be something that's completely harmonious and absolutely beautiful, or something that is just simply for themselves. I really feel like everyone has an inner song, and that's something that I feel quite passionate about, you know.
I feel that many people, like when they decide that they can't sing, that in itself prevents them from doing, because
I agree.
there's such a connection with our self-belief and our confidence and maybe even identity and our voices. And if you're not able to kind of connect with that side of yourself and to allow yourself to express some kind of feeling or emotion, then that will prevent you from getting a sound that you want to get. It's like if you listen to someone singing an Italian aria or something, like you might not know what the words mean, but if they sing it well with emotion, you can feel what they mean. It's something I work with as well when I'm teaching is um, when people are kind of stuck in their voices, or they're not finding the colors that they want to, or they're not finding the pitches that they want to. Is helping them connect to emotion to help them express. So sometimes even getting them to sing a happy song with a sad emotion can unlock some qualities that maybe they wouldn't have found otherwise. But really learn to connect with that emotion is actually a huge part of developing your voice in singing lessons.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's also a little bit like around the whole thing with the vocal activation as well, is working with emotion and sound. You know, it's
Is that
really
the same? I've written a note down, the vocal toning for vibrational well-being. Is that what you're talking about there with the vocal toning?
it's that, yes, that's a part of it.
Okay.
The vocal tone, that's what I'm doing with the hot harmonies. So I'm doing this new venture. We've done three of them. We've got another couple coming up at the end of this month in January. And it's with a local sauna called My Haven Sauna. And it is working with we bring the sauna down to a little bit of a lower temperature, but it helps to just kind of open up the body a little bit more. And we're working with chakra sounds. We're working with the different tones of the organs within the body. We're working with the orofacial massage. We're working with just a lot of that kind of textures of stuff, but it's in the sauna, so it's also working with the elements because we're working with the fire, and then we come out and we get into the sea, and we work with um and people are working with essential oils and stuff like that then as well, because we have like these salt scrubs that we put on and then body oils afterwards. So it's a really nurturing and holistic experience, and people are just blown away by it. It's only an hour and a half, but people are kind of coming out being like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
you
It's
know
probably just like a completely
so
new experience for them, a new sensory
yeah,
experience.
it's a sensory experience, but it is also giving people the opportunity to find the voice and to connect with the voice, but not, again, it's not about singing words. It's about really embodying sound as a medicine rather than just being in a performance mode. It's about sound as a healing modality. And I've got like bowls and a lot of different types of, you know, um, energy bars, they're called.
Yeah,
Not
I have
like,
the throat chakra one.
yeah, 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 you know the one. Yeah, when I say energy bars, people think it's like, one of these things, a protein bar after you go for a workout. But no, I have one right there now, but it's a little bit out of my reach. But yeah,
Yeah.
they're just working with different, types of vibrational equipment,
Yeah.
which we also then bring into the sound bathings as well. So I do sound bathings. I've been doing different types of sound workshops for quite many years. I originally started with a girl who played the cello,
Can you hear the
and
baby
she was,
crying? Sorry. I can hear him crying now. I'm like, I'm going to get a knock on the door now any minute to
yeah,
come down to
well,
feed him.
you know, he's also, there you go. And that's another thing, the sound of a baby crying, what that actually does to a mother. And I also know that, I mean, I used to be a really deep sleeper until I had kids. And then all of a sudden it was like they could literally burp in the night and I'd be like, what? It's
It's a whole new
your
experience.
senses become so heightened to their sounds. And
Yeah,
also, even you personally know, oh, that they're doing that little sound, that means that they might be feeling this way. Or you start to
yeah,
identify that the sounds that they're making
yeah,
correlate to different things that are going on. They're not producing words,
yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
but yet they're communicating, and you yeah, and like, even they might make a certain sound, you're like, "Hmm, think they're going to there's a poo coming on
Yeah,
there,"
yeah,
it's like, or
yeah.
whatever. It's like you get so into it. Yeah, what you were going to
I was
say.
just going to say that I think I've mentioned this before, but I read or heard somewhere along the way that they think that we actually sang before we spoke,
Hmm.
and like I so believe that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
that makes complete sense.
And
Okay.
also, when a baby is in the womb, like, the loudest sound that they can actually hear is, number one, the beating of a mother's heart.
Yeah.
That's their main, it's like that is literally like the pulse of their
Home for
life
them. Yeah.
before they come out, and the sound of a mother's voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they already have that identification before they actually come out. They've already got that sound is ingrained in them
Yeah.
before
It's
they even come
amazing.
out. And that's also why a lot of the times you'll find that babies will settle and sleep on a father's chest when they're first coming out of the womb. And, those first couple of months, they find great comfort with sleeping on a father's chest. And that is because the sound of the heartbeat, it brings them back into that place. So,
Yeah. It's a lovely way for a father to bond with the baby,
mhm,
because
mhm,
when once the baby becomes more conscious of its surroundings, it becomes very attached to the mother. And I know
it does.
myself and Stephen, like Stephen is struggles sometimes to soothe the baby because the baby just wants to be on me or with me, especially because I'm breastfeeding as well. Like he's so
Mhm,
attached to me. Like sure, he
mhm.
was in me for 9 months before he came out, and now. So it's it's an interesting journey to try and figure out how to bond with the baby when you're not the mother.
It is, it is. And I think that, they say that babies look more like their fathers when they first come out. And that comes from a tribal thing, you know, so that they can identify, yes, that is my child. But they are more bonded to the mother, obviously, because the mother is their source of nourishment, their source of, you know, it's that connection, even though the cord is cut energetically, that's still there. So I do understand that there can be a hard time for a father to bond with a baby, but also think about lullabies. Like, why is it that babies drift off to sleep when we sing to them? So it's like there's so much there. Like, for me, the voice is just one of the most beautiful expressions of life. It really is. It really is. And it just, and I actually have a thing where the timbre of certain people's voices, like all the men I've ever been involved with, there's no joke. It's been their voice that I've been attracted to before them. I'm like, what's that voice? What's that sound? Oh, it's like there's something to do with the resonance of their voice that actually, I'm like, oh, I like how that makes me feel inside, or I like the sound of that in my ear, or
That's
whatever,
so
So
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, I'm gonna have to wrap it up now because I have a
Absolutely.
student coming on at 2, and I think I need to feed the baby as well. Probably give him a little tap up before I do the lesson. But before we finish up, do you want to? I'll add like what I'll get you to do is send me a bio and a little
Mhm.
picture that I could use, or I could grab one off your Instagram, either one that kind of works well in a poster, and I'll add all your links to like anything that you want me to add, anyways, or videos or social media pages. But is there anything else? What's next? Where are you gigging this weekend? What's happening next?
So what's happening next is that, well, I've got a gigs. I think I'm in the Montanati on Saturday night and in the Beer House on Sunday,
Yeah,
in Cork. So we're always kind of playing around and
and
about
that's
Cork,
with
and then
the what are they
with the
called? The
underscore.
underscore orchestra. Yeah.
Yeah, with the underscore orchestra. And then at the end of the month, I'm doing some hot harmonies with my Haven sauna. So we've got
Fab.
a couple of those happening again. And then there's just kind of that type of thing going on. I've got a couple of workshops. I'm going to be doing a full weekend in April down in the Beara. It's a retreat that we're
Okay.
working on right now. It's called Beara Your Soul.
Oh, I love it. Nice play on words there.
Um, so that's something else that's coming up, and that will involve another woman called Isadora. And she is a somatic practitioner and an actress, and she does all this wonderful movement stuff, and it's involved with movement and voice.
Okay.
And yeah, so
That's
there's plenty
brilliant.
things coming up. We're constantly gigging, and I also have Aspeces as well, which is another band that I have going on with
Oh,
a cello player and a guitarist, and we are now incorporating a piano player into that as well. And that's all original stuff, and a lot of it
wow.
is in like absolutely cray cray languages that I make up, and it's always the same every time, but it's my own language.
Wow.
And we do some bits and pieces in Irish, and we do like so it's all original music
Oh
that
my
we
god,
do
I
there.
would love to catch that gig live
It's
at some
very
point.
ethereal. It's very ethereal, and it's
I
quite.
love it.
And I use a vocal processor sometimes with
Yeah,
that, and do some poetry in a robot voice, putting on a Dublin
amazing.
accent with a robot voice. So it's
Amazing.
quite.
It
So it's a
sounds
lot of fun.
trippy, but like, yes, I want to hear that.
Yeah,
Whenever the
it
baby lets me leave the house, I'll come and see you in that performance.
sounds great.
But
Sounds
Lady
great.
Fee, thank you so much for
Thank you,
coming on
Rebecca.
and chatting to me. I can't wait to check out some of those offerings that you've just listed, and
Mhm.
I'm really delighted to introduce you to my listeners as well. And I hope that anyone who's listening, has learned something or just feels inspired after listening to Lady Fee talk.
Oh, and there's a scatting workshop coming up soon as well in
Oh,
Maureen's. So
class.
I've done a couple of scatting workshops in
Yeah,
Maureen's in these last couple of months, and we have another one coming up, I think, in the middle of February.
that's an
So
amazing. If anybody is interested in scatting or just wants to do it for fun,
mm,
go to that workshop because Lady Fee is honestly amazing at scatting. Like she's so natural and so brilliant at it, and the way she uses her voice, I just can't speak highly enough of her scatting
thank you, I
abilities.
appreciate
So
it.
please go check that out.
And ditto
Um,
yourself, an amazing, amazing woman. The things you're doing with all the kids and everything is just absolutely fantastic. It's so beautiful
uh,
to see it.
thanks,
Yeah.
Fee. Thanks,
And the
Fee. Sure, I
workshop
love
is,
it.
it's not just about scatting, really. It's
Mm-hmm.
about learning how to improvise.
Class. That sounds
And
brilliant.
scatting, it just is a channel into that. So
Yeah, it sounds very accessible. So, guys, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.